We live in this world that's constantly whispering, sometimes even shouting, that more is better, right? But why do so many of us, even when we hit those big milestones, still feel this kind of unspoken emptiness? Maybe you felt it too. That nagging sense that something's missing, even when, on paper, you seem to have everything you could possibly want. Today on the deep dive, we're going to try and cut through that noise. We're diving deep into the, well, unexpected truth about contentment. Our mission here is to look at insights from a whole range of sources: psychology, personal transformation stories, economic ideas, even ancient wisdom. We want to figure out why chasing more often leaves us feeling less fulfilled, and maybe, just maybe, how to find that true feeling of enough from within.
It really is a huge paradox, isn't it? This belief we all seem to have deep down that piling up more money or more stuff or more status, that will somehow bring lasting happiness. But the sources we looked at, they consistently point to something else. They say the most dangerous thing is to want more. And what enough actually means, well, that's completely subjective. Nobody else can decide that for you.
Yeah, I think we've all felt that pull where the goalposts just keep moving further away. I remember reading this story. It was about someone who really seemed to have it all, like a thriving family, a loving husband, and all the riches a girl could ask for. That's how it was put. But even with all that, she still felt this big gaping hole inside her. It wasn't about lacking time or money, she had plenty of both, but real contentment, still out of reach.
So what's the trap here? Psychologically, I mean. Why does that feeling stick around even when things look great on the outside? Well, what's really fascinating, psychologically speaking, is this thing called hedonic adaptation. Some people call it the arrival fallacy. You know, that initial buzz you get from a new purchase? Or maybe a big achievement, like getting a promotion.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It feels amazing, right? But it's also incredibly fleeting. Our brains, they adapt really quickly to that new baseline. And then what happens?
You start wanting something else.
Exactly. The thirst for more returns, as one source put it. And that just keeps this relentless cycle going, consuming, acquiring, feeling empty, wanting more. It's like being on a treadmill you can't get off. And it gets fueled heavily by constantly comparing ourselves to others, looking at what they have.
Right, the social media effect.
Precisely. And that fear of missing out, FOMO, it just ramps up the anxiety and really chips away at any kind of mental peace.
Okay, so if piling up external more is a dead end, how do we actually shift gears? How do we start cultivating that feeling of enough on the inside? What do the sources suggest?
Well, one interesting figure that comes up is Michael J. Klein. He's sometimes called the enoughness guy. Yeah. His whole focus is helping people tap into their inherent value. And his own story is pretty powerful. He went on this incredibly challenging trek, the El Camino de Costa Rica. It's 174 miles across all sorts of terrain.
Wow, 174 miles.
Yeah, it sounds intense. But for him, it wasn't just a physical hike. It became this deep metaphor for his own journey towards feeling enough. And out of that came this really practical mantra he uses. Just take things 1 inch at a time.
1 inch at a time. I like that.
It's about making progress, right?
Yeah.
Small, consistent steps instead of getting totally overwhelmed by the sheer size of the challenge ahead, whether that's a literal mountain or an emotional one.
That sounds much more manageable, less daunting. And you mentioned he does work around stuck trauma, using something called RIM.
That's right, regenerating images in memory, or RIM. It's a technique he uses, and it's a core part of his approach. The idea is that releasing those old, stuck emotions is absolutely crucial because past traumas, and we're talking big T's traumas, but also smaller accumulated stresses, they can really profoundly shape how we act and feel today. If you don't deal with them, they can seriously block your personal growth. And importantly, that fundamental feeling of being worthy, of being enough, is like, trying to build a solid house on shaky ground. It just won't hold up.
Makes sense. You have to clear the foundation first.
Exactly. And building on that, another key part of his philosophy is using joy as a guide, like a compass, basically. Following what brings you genuine joy can lead you on your path to enoughness. He has this really encouraging way of putting it, too. He says, essentially, you don't have to feel enough today. You can know intellectually that you're enough, and you may or may not believe that. Let's just start where we are and move at our own pace.
Oh, that takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
It really does. It allows you to just start where you are without judgment and take those small steps inward. Progress, not instant perfection.
I think that's a huge relief for a lot of people listening. Okay, so we've talked about the inner work, the psychological shifts. Let's pivot to the practical side. breaking free from materialism, it doesn't mean you have to, like, live in poverty or renounce
All
everything.
right. Oh,
Right.
absolutely not. That's
Yeah.
a common misconception.
So what does finding enough look like in our day-to-day lives, our habits, our choices?
Well, minimalism comes up a lot, but it's presented as much more than just, decluttering your closet, though, that can be part of it. The real magic, according to our sources, happens after you let go. It's about untethering yourself from this constant focus on material success. It's about intentionally making space, physical space, mental space, calendar space, for what actually matters most to you. It's a shift in your core priorities.
And the benefits seem pretty concrete. The sources list quite a few, financially, for example.
Right. You spend less impulsively, your household costs go down, maybe you reduce debt.
Which frees up money for things that actually last, like saving for the future or investing in experiences over just stuff.
Exactly. And then there's personal well-being. People report better health. Maybe
Yeah.
they focus more on good food, exercise, sleep, because they're less stressed about acquiring things.
Mm-hmm. And relationships, too.
Yeah, prioritizing those key connections instead of chasing what one source called consumerist trophies. Showing off, basically.
Consumerist trophies, huh? Okay.
And it can also free up energy for creativity, for contributing to your community, things like that. It's not just about less, it's about making room for more of what matters.
So it's less about deprivation and more about intentionality.
Precisely. And that ties directly into this idea of mindful consumption. One source described it as a customer-oriented structural solution to a sustainable future, which sounds a bit academic, but the core idea is powerful.
Okay, break that down a bit.
It involves two things. First, a mindful mindset, basically, caring for yourself, your community, and the planet. And second, mindful behavior, which really boils down to temperance, moderation in how we consume.
Temperance. That's an interesting word choice. It's not about stopping completely, but controlling it.
Exactly. And the sources identify three main types of excessive consumption we need to temper or moderate.
Okay, what are they?
First is acquisitive consumption. This is just having way more stuff than you actually need or use. It leads to clutter, overwhelm, that feeling of drowning in possessions.
Yeah, the overflowing spare room, the junk drawer.
That's the one. Then there's repetitive consumption. This is that cycle of buying things that are designed to be disposable or become obsolete really quickly, throwing them out and buying the next version.
Like fast fashion, or maybe upgrading your phone every single year, even if the old one works fine.
Perfect examples. And third, there's aspirational consumption. This is basically conspicuous consumption, showing off, where luxury goes mainstream, as they play.
Oh, the status symbols.
Right? Buying expensive things or having lavish experiences,
Yep.
mainly to project an image, to keep up, to demonstrate status. The fancy car you can't really afford, the trip planned purely for the photos, that kind of thing.
Got it. So acquisitive, repetitive, and aspirational consumption.
And looking at the bigger picture, it's really clear that this kind of overconsumption by a few prosperous ones has far-reaching social costs. It fuels massive problems like overflowing landfills, using up finite resources, contributing to climate change, which is why the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, are so critical.
It connects individual choices to global impact.
Absolutely. And the kicker is, despite the shiny promises, this excessive consumption doesn't even deliver happiness. It often leads to the opposite. Perpetual stress, poor health, and unhappiness. It's an illusion.
That's a really stark warning. Okay, so if we understand the traps, we see the downsides of materialism and overconsumption. Here's where it gets really interesting for me. Can we actually train our brains? Can we scientifically learn to be more content with what we have?
It's a great question. And surprisingly, maybe. The answer seems to be yes. And one powerful tool for this is gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay, tell me more.
There's some compelling research here. One study, for example, looked at almost 300 adults who were seeking mental health counseling. They split them into groups. One group just did the counseling, another did counseling plus wrote about negative experiences. But a third group did counseling and wrote gratitude letters each week for 3 weeks.
Okay, and what happened?
The results were pretty striking. The gratitude letter group reported significantly better mental health, not just immediately, but 4 weeks later and even 12 weeks later compared to the other groups.
12 weeks later. Just from writing a few letters.
Yeah, the positive effects were tangible and lasted well beyond the act of writing itself.
Wow. So what did they learn from that? What were the key insights?
Well, a few things stood out. First, gratitude writing seems to genuinely help unshackle us from toxic emotions. When you actively focus on what you're thankful for, It literally shifts your attention away from things like resentment or envy. It's harder to stew in negativity.
That makes sense. You're redirecting your focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, and this is really fascinating, you don't even need to send the letter. The mental health benefits happened even if the person never shared their gratitude with the recipient.
Seriously, so it's the internal act itself.
It seems so. The power lies in the internal shift, the practice of recognizing and articulating gratitude. Third, the benefits weren't always instant. It was more like a positive snowball effect. The improvements often emerged gradually over time and could even get stronger weeks later.
A snowball effect,
Yeah.
okay. It builds on itself.
Right. And perhaps the most amazing part, there seemed to be actual lasting changes in the brain.
Okay, now you've really got my attention. Brain changes.
Yeah. About 3 months after the study began, they did fMRI scans. They found that when people in the gratitude group experienced feelings of gratitude, they showed increased activity in a specific brain region, the medial prefrontal cortex.
And what does that part of the brain do?
It's heavily involved in things like learning, decision-making, and understanding social situations.
Yeah.
So the findings suggest that practicing gratitude can literally train the brain to be more sensitive to the experience of gratitude over time.
So you're actually rewiring your brain to notice the good stuff more easily.
That's the idea. It helps us appreciate the people and things we do have, sort of counteracting that built-in human tendency to always be looking for what's next, for the more.
That is genuinely powerful. Okay, so taking all of this on board, the psychology, the personal journeys, the practical steps, the science of gratitude, stepping back, what does this tell us about, the bigger picture? Is this focus on enoughness just a modern reaction, or does it connect to older wisdom?
Oh, it absolutely connects. This isn't a new idea at all. It echoes through many, many wisdom traditions across centuries. A really interesting modern example, though, comes from Thailand, the sufficiency economy philosophy. It's attributed to the late king Bhumibol Adulyadej.
Sufficiency economy, how does that work?
Its core ideas are reasonableness, which basically means using wisdom in your decisions, moderation, and prudence. And these are supported by knowledge and morality. It's an approach to development that isn't just about maximizing growth at any cost.
And didn't it become prominent during a crisis?
Yes, exactly. It really gained traction during the 1997 Asian economic crisis. The king gave this famous speech on TV saying, "Being a tiger is not important. The important thing for us is to have a sufficient economy. A sufficient economy means to have enough to support ourselves."
Wow, that's quite a statement during an economic meltdown, a direct challenge to the prevailing growth at all costs model.
Absolutely. And if you look even further back, you see similar threads in, say, ancient Taoist philosophy.
Oh.
Well, Taoism isn't really about total detachment from the world or material things. It acknowledges that humans build and interact with their environment. But it emphasizes diminishing covetous or greedy desires. The goal is inner peace, a state of placidity achieved through balance. Avoiding extremes, so not hoarding everything, but also not renouncing everything either. It's about finding that mindful middle path.
Harmony, balance.
Exactly. Moderation is key.
Now, it's probably fair to say that concepts like the sufficiency economy haven't been without critics, right? Some people find them a bit vague or hard to implement practically in today's complex world.
That's true. There have been debates about the practical application and definition.
But despite those critiques, that underlying principle, this idea of seeking contentment through moderation, through inner resources, rather than just endlessly chasing external things, it feels like a really powerful, universal theme, doesn't it? It runs through so many different traditions.
Absolutely. It's a timeless reminder, really, that maybe true wealth isn't about how much you have, but about how little you actually need to feel content.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, it feels like the key takeaway isn't some complex formula, but something more fundamental. True contentment, it seems, isn't really found out there in the relentless, exhausting chase for more.
No, it seems to be cultivated from the inside out. By developing those inner resources we talked about, recognizing our own inherent worth, that feeling of enoughness.
And by being more mindful about how and why we consume things.
Right, and harnessing that incredible power of gratitude, which can literally reshape how our brain perceives the world.
It really comes down to finding peace within ourselves, right here, right now, appreciating our present circumstances instead of always yearning for some future state.
Well said.
So for you listening, here's something to think about as we close. Just a little food for thought. What's one single, maybe even tiny habit you could try this week? Maybe it's actually writing that gratitude note, even if you don't send it. Or perhaps decluttering one small corner, one drawer. Or maybe it's just pausing intentionally for 60 seconds to truly appreciate something you already have. What small step could you take that might begin to redefine what enough means for you? What could set you on your own unexpected path to contentment?